Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Maximum Downforce Season 2, 2022. A brand new year for Formula One, a brand new year for this radio show, and we are looking forward to bringing you every single detail from every single race and every bit of news that we can give you. I'm your host, as always, Will Knight, and joining me this year, a revolving door of panelists today. Joining us, Alex Bomberg, Harry Parkhouse, and Ryan Ferris. Alex, due to the fact that your name is alphabetically first, I'm going to come to you first. How excited are you for this season?
Certainly very excited. The new cars, albeit 1 year late, should pose not only an interesting thing for the teams, but also a viewing point for the spectators. Could we see an order shaken up, or will it remain the same? That's not the only questions to be answered, though, ahead of the season. New team lineups, new drivers. George Russell, one of them, coming to the forefront of F1. Can he take it to seven-time world champion Sir Lewis Hamilton? And that's not it. There's so many unanswered questions going into the season, and can't wait to turn on the TV this weekend and have some of them answered.
Harry, pre-season testing has come and gone. It's been a wild ride for most of the teams. Quite a few of them doing well, others not so well. It's really the main thing we're focusing on here is the unpredictability, the nature of the season. It looks so good to watch.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think that last year, off the back of it, we saw that it was the battle between Verstappen and Hamilton, Red Bull, Mercedes. And now coming into it, we have no real clue as to who's going to be at the forefront. We have a couple of teams in mind, but whether others were sandbagging in testing or the shakedown in Barcelona, because that wasn't technically testing, but it's certainly an interesting prospect. And whether it will live up to what happened last year in a title fight, if it gets anywhere near, I think with a bunch of teams involved, then certainly we're in for a good season ahead. The new cars, as Alex mentioned as well, are certainly ones to look out for. And of course, there's going to be some sort of new talking points of new developments and new sort of aspects of the cars that I'm sure a lot will come under criticism for during the season from many other teams. But it's definitely exciting prospect. And some teams in testing, as you said, Will, they have struggled a bit more than you would have expected, and some have managed to find a bit of extra pace somewhere, whether that's just other teams sandbagging, as said before, or they've turned up the wick just for the testing area. But it very unpredictable. It's one of the only real seasons of F1, especially in the recent sort of decade even, that you can go into and say, I have no idea who's going to be at the forefront. And it's certainly an interesting prospect. And when we get to this weekend in Bahrain, who knows who's going to be at the front?
Ryan, I know you're a sucker for a good-looking car. What do you think about the design of this year? Do you think that it's lived up to the hype? Obviously, the whole point about simplifying the aerodynamics. We've got such a radical new look for the cars, and altogether the grid is just so different this year. It really does look like a beautiful set of cars we're going to be watching this season.
Indeed, I think the cars look absolutely gorgeous. Obviously, a lot of teams going in different directions, unlike in previous years where everyone kind of figured out, yeah, this is the way to go. Then towards the end of the regulations, a lot of the cars look pretty similar. Every car's different, and it's amazing to see how different teams have taken on board the new regulations. And you've got Ferrari with its weird side pods. You've got Mercedes with the lack of side pods, and you have Aston Martin with the raised nose. Most teams have gone for the lower nose, and yeah, they look stunning out on track as well.
Now, I know what you guys think we're going to be opening up the podcast with today, but I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at the three of you and focus on a bit of a development from last season, just a bit of a recap for those who didn't see last year's season finale and why you here if you didn't, because that season ended in an abruptly controversial, amazing, entertaining manner. But the man at the centre of it wasn't the world champion Max Verstappen. It wasn't the second place driver Lewis Hamilton. It was the race director Michael Massey. Since then, Michael Massey has been promoted into a new role for the FIA, bringing in two new people instead to act as race director. Alex, what are your thoughts on the fact that he's been moved aside from this position after the don't think it's the wrong thing to say, but terrible mistake that he made at the end of last year in the handling of that situation.
I think, in a way, it's the FIA, although not blatantly saying it, is the FIA admitting that Massey was at fault for what happened in Abu Dhabi. So interesting that obviously there was the inquiry into the whole race and how it ended in Abu Dhabi. The FIA haven't said anything on that, but in moving Michael Massey aside, I think it paints enough of a picture. When it comes to replacing him, obviously the two race directors coming in, we'll have to see what sort of a job they've done. Both experienced in other series. I think WEC was one of them that they've both done some race directing in. And also the introduction of the new almost VAR system, the virtual race direction system, which F1 will be bringing in. I think all in all, it's obviously towards pointing towards a more fair sport and an eventuality where there's fair decisions and continuity between the decisions throughout a season.
Harry, throughout my time at university, being surrounded by people talking about football and the sporting regulations of that sport, completely separate to motorsport, I've been relying a lot on you, especially in walking me through the different natures, the offside rules, something I'm still struggling to understand either way. If there's someone who understands the concept of VAR, it's you. So just walk me through the positives and negatives that this new system will bring forward.
Well, I mean, in football, it's certainly used in somewhat of a different way in the sense that in football at the moment it's not heavily liked, and it's still taken a long time in football for it to come to fruition for people to enjoy it, and it still hasn't technically. So it's a completely new sort of basis and system that the FIA has introduced, and the only reason why I would say they have done this is due to the fact of that one singular race. It was a ridiculously high pressure scenario for Michael Massey to be dealt with. He had people in his ear constantly 24/7, and it was a difficult situation. I think now what they're trying to do at the FIA is they're saying that the constant communication will not be broadcasted. Yeah, it won't be broadcasted to the general public, but there still will be some sort of input from the teams towards the FIA race directors. And what I would imagine that we will see, especially in the opening races, is that we won't see necessarily too much go the way of one sort of team, if you know what I mean, in terms of, I think it will be more lenient to start off with. And then once it's more of a base system, it will turn into something that hopefully we can progress in as a sport. As you said, Will, the end of last season, it was complete chaos. Teams and drivers were confused, not just Mercedes, and the only ones who really benefited was Red Bull, and the rest of the grid was sort of, and then Mercedes were, no, absolutely not. So I think this sort of system and the way that they're trying to implicate things is to try and make things more fair for everyone on the grid instead of just focusing on, like you say, Red Bull, Mercedes at the top, because they were the two fighting for the championship. The rest of the other teams didn't really get any look in. And I think that during the race is going to be where it's going to be more popular, of course, because that was a one-lap decision at the end of the season. And it will come more into fruition with the likes of sort of time penalties, maybe track extending warnings as well as that. And of course, your general racing incidents when two drivers or more collide, maybe at the start of races as they go throughout sort of the race. It will become more into fruition from incidents at the start of the race, if you know what I mean. So it's an interesting system, and I can see why they are trying new things, considering the mass amount of backlash they received from the end of the season, and that backlash has not stopped still from many fans, especially Mercedes fans, which is arguably understandable, but it's a difficult one. And if, like I said, it takes a lot less time than VAR did to sort of come to a standstill, and the drivers, especially the team principals as well, who got heavily involved, to say that this is a decent system and that the race directors are doing their job properly and following the book, then I see no reason as to why this won't work a lot quicker than VAR in football does.
Well, the whole point that these new systems have been brought in was the cataclysmic mistakes that Michael Massey made last season during the season finale. But we've also got to remember that the brand new people that have been brought into this role, Niels Wittich, I believe his name is. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that name properly. Probably not. And Eduardo Freitas, formerly DTM race director and Freitas WEC race director. We've got to remember that these two are both coming off of the back of their own controversial decisions. Obviously, Liam Lawson deciding he's never going to race in DTM again after a crash last season cost him the championship. And the whole situation with Porsche and Ferrari going on in Bahrain, which cost, I believe it was Porsche, lost the championship last season. Ryan, can Formula One afford to risk another situation like that?
Well, no, not really. I think what happened at Abu Dhabi has really, I don't know, cast a bit of a shadow over the sport in a sense that it's the only thing people have talked about over the winter period, to the point that I'd almost forgotten that we were having brand new cars this season, because all that was being talked about was what went wrong, whose side was on what, and yeah, I just feel that the whole situation has been very messy, and I feel that the way the FIA have gone about it is not particularly the right way. And they've got rid of Massey and then brought in two people to fill Massey's role. And then also on top of that, Herbie Blash is back as well, after spending some time working for Yamaha in MotoGP and World Superbikes. So obviously Herbie Blash worked alongside Charlie Whiting when he was race director. So effectively there's three people involved in race direction now, where there was one main race director before. So it almost, the way I looked at it is they should have brought in a Herbie Blash or Herbie Blash to be alongside Massey to help guide Massey in certain situations. But it seems that they've gone, yeah, Massey's done something wrong, we need to get rid of him. But then it almost admits that we've kind of made a mistake in a way by hiring two people to take his role and a consultant on top of that.
Well, obviously, I think the main thing to take away is that Michael Massey isn't the Formula One race director anymore. He's been replaced. We're going to be looking forward to seeing how these new characters act in their roles. And now we can focus on the 2022 season. Unfortunately, the place that we have to start is not a positive place. It's not an area which is easy or comfortable to talk about. So we're going to take a look at the Formula One ramifications of this rather than the external context. Obviously, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has forced Uralkali, however you want to pronounce it, away from the team. Uralkali have had their contract severed, which, as well as that, means Nikita Mazepin is no longer a Formula One driver. Alex, Nikita's reaction setting up this We Compete as One strategy, helping athletes get through it when they've been forced out due to non-sporting reasons. I don't want to say it's an odd reaction, but it almost is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you have to feel for some of and it spans further than motorsports. You have to feel for some of them. Mazepin's a little bit different because his dad very close with Vladimir Putin. It's a tricky question to answer. I would say, as I mentioned just a moment ago, there will be some drivers who were sort of punished through no work of their own, no wrongdoing of their own. And I think that's what Mazepin's foundation you mentioned, Will, is pointing towards. But it's a little bit different for Mazepin with his close relationship with Putin. But the overwhelming topic is that you feel for the drivers who have been, and not only drivers, as I said, it spans wider. You feel for the people who've been forced out of their jobs as a result of what's happened.
Harry, Haas have been very quick to respond with the fact that they are completely fine financially in terms of the ramifications, the loss of sponsorship money, your Alkali seemingly recalling the sponsorship money that was paid beforehand during the pre-season. Haas have a bit of an act for getting themselves into sponsorship deals which eventually end before their contract is supposed to end with them. Obviously, Rich Energy in 2019 breaking off the deal halfway through the season, and now no more Uralkali sponsorship on the car. Do you think they'll be able to survive this season, or going on into the next season, will they sell up to a potential buyer, the likes of Andretti wanting to come into the sport?
It's a very interesting topic, and at the moment, as much as the likes of Gunther Steiner and Gene Haas say that they are completely fine financially, you look at the other teams and what they've been saying about the amount it costs just to get into Formula One as one of the back markers. It's a ridiculous expensive. It's a whole brand new overhaul, effectively, of not only a business but then starting up the motorsport aspect of it. It's a lot harder than it seems, especially for someone like an American outfit who, in Haas, yes, they've been in the sport for quite a few years now, but have they necessarily been at the peak that they really wanted? Absolutely not. And it seems to be a downward trajectory at the moment. But you look at their testing form, it seems to be a little bit better. They seem to be on the up. Whether that's anything to do with sort of the fact that they completely cancelled out the entirety of last year to focus on this year, maybe yes, and that they may fade during the season, which is what they did during their Rich Energy phase as well. They faded a lot during the season after that sponsorship money started to dry up a bit. And it is worrying for Haas. And as much as I think that they can deflect these comments and say that they are fine, I will not be surprised to see if Andretti do place a bid for the American outfit and they do bring in the likes of Colton Herta and they do take over the team entirely. I wouldn't be surprised to see it that at all, to be honest. I don't think that Haas will necessarily be within the clear, especially within the next year or two. I think that the start of this year, like they were with Rich Energy, will be a lot more fine. It'll be modest in terms of the amount of money that they have received from Uralkali. But as the season goes on, I think that they will start to struggle, and especially next season, if they are still within the competition next season, which is still up in the air whether they will be, they're certainly going to struggle money-wise next season unless they can find a sponsor that's going to be willing to give up the money like Uralkali did. But on the same point as that and Rich Energy, it's sort of Uralkali. It's not very fair on Haas, if I'm honest. Haas did not want to be tied with the Russian outfit, especially since they were so close to the outside links, as you mentioned, Will. It was a really difficult decision for Haas to make to get rid of the sponsor because they knew that getting rid of the sponsor would get rid of their money source and one of their drivers in Nikita Mazepin. Whether that's a big loss is yet to be seen. But you look at F2 and Alex Smolja is still within the sport. He's racing under a neutral flag and he's racing under a neutral nation. So he's still within the sport and still hoping that his career can carry on as fine. The only difference was, as Alex mentioned, was that Mazepin has such close ties to higher powers. And yes, Mazepin's sort of statements that he's come out with are very interesting. Some of them many athletes say Belarusians and Russians might not pay any attention to him at all. And him and Haas have had a dodgy relationship since the start. And I think him and Formula One have had a very dodgy relationship. So at the moment, I can see that Haas might be a little bit of a clearer picture than they were last year. They might seem to say that they're within the clear and that they're fine at the moment. They've got a better driver lineup, if you ask me. And if you ask, I would say about 99% of Formula One fans, they've got a better driver lineup now. So in that aspect, they're doing well, but the money-wise, it's going to be a struggle. And as you mentioned, Will, I really would not be surprised to see Andretti come in for next year, and we'll see maybe a full American outfit, Colton Herta, and maybe another driver from IndyCar. Maybe they'll keep Mick Schumacher, who knows? But I can very well easily see Andretti take over Haas. They are in a very interesting situation.
Here's the thing. This is something to touch on with the next topic for you, Ryan. All the drivers Haas had the option to pick, they had the likes of Antonio Giovinazzi, Nico Hülkenberg, their test and reserve driver Pietro Fittipaldi. Although I do think Hülkenberg would have been a very good option in terms of experience and in terms of being a mentor to Mick Schumacher. Antonio Giovinazzi, I think last season he was let go from Formula One. I don't think he'll be back, in all honesty with you. Pietro Fittipaldi, although he did a good job replacing Romain Grosjean in 2020, the final 2 races there, I don't think he's quick enough for a full-time Formula One seat. You know, he's a very fast driver. Whether or not he'd be able to rival Mick Schumacher, on the other hand, is yet to be seen. Of all the drivers they had to pick, who would have thought Kevin Magnussen would be returning to this team? He smashed their doors up. He had some very interesting relationships with his former teammate Romain Grosjean. But at the end of the day, he's back, a multi-year deal in Formula One. He's abandoned Chip Ganassi. He's abandoned Peugeot. He's back in Formula One. And in all honesty, he's back where he belongs.
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd one, to be honest. Watching the whole saga unravel as to the new driver for Haas once Nikita was gone, I don't think once Magnussen's name appeared until the morning of the day that he was announced. Pietro seemed like the clear favourite at one point. However, I thought it would have been a very odd choice to go for. I mean, if you look at the way that he obtained his super license, it wasn't exactly your normal way of going about it, and he hadn't really performed particularly much in his junior career. So yeah, I could see it from a standpoint that he is their reserve driver, but at the same time he's a rookie, and so with a brand new car you need someone that's going to have the experience to be able to know what he wants from a car and know how to go about doing it. Hülkenberg, again, another solid move at the moment with Aston Martin as their test and reserve driver. And Giovinazzi, currently in Formula E. I mean, to be honest, his performances so far that I've seen in Formula E were a little bit below par. But yeah, Magnussen, he's gone to the States, come in with Ganassi, he's got race wins, he's proven to pretty much everyone, a bit like Romain Grosjean really, that he's still got performance and the ability to deliver at a high level. And given the right car, he can do so. And so I think that's the reason why Haas went for him, along with the same fact that he was only with the team a couple years ago, so he already knows everyone within the team, and so it should be very quick for him to gel with the team. So I do think it was actually a very good move from Haas.
Well, obviously Gunther Steiner's been pretty quick to come out and say the fact that he always wanted Magnussen in the car last year. He wanted to line up with Schumacher and Magnussen, but yeah, the team's financial struggles put pay to that. Another reason why we're going to be talking about the consequences of Russia. There's going to be no Russian Grand Prix this season. Its contract has been ripped up by Formula One, meaning no more trips to Sochi this season. Next year we won't be heading to St. Petersburg. Currently we have a blank spot on the calendar. There's no race has been announced to fill it. And I just want to get your 3 opinions on who should come in for it. I'm just going to get mine out quickly. All of you will know how much I love Sepang. Malaysia is one of my favourite all-time circuits. It is the perfect place in the calendar around Japan and Singapore for it to be slotted in nicely there. It's not far for the teams to move within that sort of within that run of races. It would provide good racing, especially with the new cars. It was always good racing. 2017, its last appearance, Max Verstappen's second win in Formula One. That's the thing I'm going to put forward. Alex, I want to hear yours.
I agree with you, Will. I think that's absolutely spot on. Sepang, a great track, can provide great racing. Got a little bit of history with Formula One. They've been going there for a while. It's almost a fan favourite. A lot of fans very, very fond of Sepang in Malaysia, and I'm one of them. I think it's a great track. I think it would be great with the new cars. Very physical race for the drivers. That poses another thing, and overall I think it would be fantastic to see it return on the calendar.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. I love Sepang. I think it should have been on the calendar since it's left, if I'm honest. I think that there's quite a disjustice that there are some tracks that we have at the moment that are on the calendar and that Sepang is not. Um, I think all the points that Alex and you've made, Will, are perfectly valid and it should be on the calendar in the replacement. I don't know whether it will be or whether they'll just go to Turkey like they usually do for a backup option at the moment. Any other suggestions? Maybe I'll probably say India because I'm a biased Sebastian Vettel fan. So other than that, I think I'll go Sepang though.
Always some way to mention Sebastian Vettel in these podcasts. We'll be getting to him later. Don't worry, Harry. Ryan, let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, again, Sepang, a solid option. I did find it quite amusing when the Sepang circuit Twitter started making loads of hints and kind of going, oh, look, there's a free spot on the Grand Prix calendar and things along those sorts of lines, which is almost like they are interested in a race because before they got rid of Formula One because they felt that it didn't bring in the crowds that they would have wanted when they could have hosted MotoGP for a lot less and have a full pack crowd, but potentially their minds have changed since. Other things that I think of, because the race beforehand is in Italy, it would be interesting to see how the ground effect cars go around Mugello, because that is a roller coaster of a circuit. That could be interesting, and potentially, if the new cars deliver the way that they're supposed to, could possibly give us better racing than we had before, because the main problem was the fact that it was hard to follow the car in front, which made Mugello not so much as entertaining as we thought it would be. But then again, Turkey I still think is quite a solid shout. Two races in a row where we've had fairly dramatic racing. Obviously conditions have played a part, but Turkey has always had some controversial moments over the years. So, to be honest, those three I think are good shouts.
One prospect which people have been throwing up is a possible return to Africa. When Stefano Domenicali came in as the CEO and president of Formula One, he said that within the next few years we would be seeing a South African Grand Prix, possibly at Kyalami. Now, I know for a fact that you said earlier that if you heard anything about Formula One that was before you were born, you would hate me forever. So you're going to love to hear the fact that, did you know on this day in 1993, the opener of Formula One was held in South Africa? My question to you three today, we'll go with Alex and then Harry and then Ryan. Who took pole position and then who went on to win the Grand Prix?
I'm going to take a punt. Alan Prost.
Well, I mean, since Alex has gone Prost, I'll go out of the box. I'll go Damon Hill.
So for pole position and the win. Now I think that was the Grand Prix where Senna and Schumacher took each other out. So I'm going to line those two out. And it's got to be one of the Williams. I'm going to go Prost. I know that's already been said, but I think it was Prost.
So all three of you have gone for a Williams driver. It's interesting because it was in fact Alain Prost. He won the race in the FW15C, I believe it was called, the spaceship car, active suspension, every little detail you can possibly fit onto that car. Obviously, it was scrapped for 1994, but Alex and Ryan are today's winners. I'll try and get something to do with Sebastian Vettel for the next time you're on the show.
Please, come on, it's so biased against me.
One thing which people have been calling biased, Drive to Survive Season 4 has been launched. It got launched, 3 days ago now, 3 or 4 days ago. Either way, the same old story, realistically, from what I've been hearing. I've seen half of the season. Highlights, obviously, the Haas episode, as usual, some pretty highlighting stuff there. Just getting your thoughts on the show this year, guys. I'm not sure if you've watched it or not. This entire segment will probably be made completely useless if none of you have seen the show. But we'll go ahead and I'll ask you anyway, Alex. What do you think about it?
I mean, I caught the first episode last night. I'd come back from Wales racing this weekend in BPEC and turned it on. It's same old Drive to Survive, really. I mean, you got Hamilton and Verstappen side by side into the first corner at turn one, and we're looking at Norris and Ricciardo. Um, I personally, I've sort of grown out of the series. I'm not a massive fan of it. But crucially, I can understand the draw for it. I'm well aware it's directed more at the more casual viewer. It's designed to bring fans into Formula One, and it's achieved that goal. Just look at the attendance in USA and even Silverstone last year. Record numbers we're getting. Personally, it's not for me, but I can understand the draw of it to a casual.
I'm not sure if you've seen the show or not, but I know something you are very interested in is the meme side of things, the funnier side of things. Obviously, Gunther Steiner's boat taking center stage this year in his little Aldi catalog photo shoot. Just got any highlights there?
You can call me a plastic fan, but I've just seen the memes, and I thought the Gunther Steiner with the caption "My boat" and his little boat was very funny and very wholesome. So that's the only thing that I've seen from Drive to Survive, if I'm honest. I've watched the previous seasons. I haven't thought too much of it, to be honest. I guess it's good if you don't know what's happened that year, if you have no idea about the sport really, or what has happened during the races. It will be a very good, entertaining sort of series. But I guess to the more regular viewer, it's just sort of stuff that we already know as sort of a sort of money grab, really, for just Netflix and for any Formula One industry is involved. So I'm not the biggest fan, if I'm honest. I do just like Gunther Steiner and his boat, but um, I can't say I've watched it. I might do in the future though, so definitely potential if Gunther Steiner makes more than one appearance.
Well, I'll see what I can do if we need a new logo for this season in terms of downforce. Ryan, we discussed this before the podcast. Obviously, you haven't seen the show as a whole, but one thing you have heard about is the situation between Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo being over exaggerated. I want to say taking radio clips out of context and cutting off different clips to make it look like Ricciardo pushed Norris off the track. Just give me your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, once again, it's Netflix and Drive to Survive trying to make drama out of nothing. We had the fierce rivalry between Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris last season, where any outsider might have thought that they were fierce rivals, not the best of friends. And it seems they've done the same this year with Ricciardo and Norris again, taking clips or sound bites from different races and using them in other races to try and stir the pot and produce drama that wasn't actually there, when in fact a lot of the drama was actually up front with Hamilton Verstappen. So yeah, I can see why the purists of Formula One are starting to turn away from Drive to Survive. I think the series has been progressively getting worse each season. It started off well. I mean, yeah, there is the odd issues that they've had with camera shots here and there, like the start of the race being actually showing the formation lap rather than the start of the race in some of them, and also showing track maps for completely different circuits. Yeah, it's just slowly getting worse each season from what I can see.
There we go. Another season of Drive to Survive rounded up pretty nicely in the opinions of many, I think. So I think the obvious thing to say is if you enjoy it, you enjoy it. If you don't, you don't. There's no need to hate on anyone for enjoying anything, but there's no need to dislike people for not liking something. Everyone has their own opinion, and there you go. Just time to leave it alone, unfortunately. Anyway, the thing that this podcast is supposed to be about, and finally the thing that we're getting to after around about 40 minutes worth of talking about pre-season, is pre-season. Guys, pre-season's happened, 6 days of testing in Barcelona. That wasn't really counted as a test, more of a shakedown, and also Bahrain. You can finally take times into account next week, but for now we're going to be taking a look at different things and taking them out of context because they're misleading. Max Verstappen topping testing, followed by Mick Schumacher, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, Yuki Tsunoda, Sergio Perez, Norris, and Kevin Magnussen, making it into the top 10 on his return to Formula One. Give me your thoughts.
Obviously, there's only limited amount of what we can read into for testing. What is clear though is we've all learned a new term, porpoising. The cars with the new ground effect bouncing up and down at high speeds. The Mercedes, particularly in Bahrain, struggling with that. There's a clip of the Gasly and the AlphaTauri bouncing around down the main straight as well. That's a big thing for the teams to get on top of. One team who've seemed to really crack that, McLaren, or two teams I should say, McLaren and Ferrari, both seemingly coping very well. The latter, with Ferrari, seeming to take very well to the new car and to the two tracks it's been on. Reliability's been fantastic throughout the two tests. And is this finally the year? I know we've been saying this for, well, arguably since 2007, but Ferrari looking good. Mercedes looking a little bit on the back foot, but I think it would be wrong for anyone to write them into the midfield. As of right now, I think we can call Mercedes at worst third, but still definitely within the fight. Red Bull as well, another team who look good. They, as you mentioned, will top the test. Interesting, intricate design on the side pods with the undercut. How that will play out over the course of the season, I'm not sure, but it's so great to see so many different innovations, all the cars looking completely different. I think it's great for a more hardcore viewer like myself, and certainly going off testing, I think it's going to be a fantastic season.
It's really that age-old saying, isn't it? Is roses are red, violets are blue, Ferrari look fast, Mercedes won too. Fortunately for Mercedes fans, Harry, or whether it's their usual stance of sandbagging during pre-season, Mercedes don't look like the top team for the first time. Obviously, last season they did pretty poorly, but for the first time since round about, I want to say, 2012, they don't look to be one of the top two teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting prospect for Mercedes this year. They're defending so many championships in a row now. That you have to still write them up there. You have to put them at least top two, maybe favourites still. I mean, they've got one of the best, if not the best, driver lineup on the grid, the full British duo of Russell and Hamilton. I mean, it's certainly an interesting prospect. And the question is really for Mercedes is whether they can get their car streamlined enough so that it doesn't bump around all over the place. If it's not this junky piece of metal that's just bumping along all over the straights and has understeer through these sharp corners, it's not looking like a car you want to drive out of all the ones that we've seen in testing at the moment, which is why people are saying that this season more than the rest, that Mercedes will most likely be going down the grid instead of staying where they are. But we've heard from Hamilton, we've heard that he is not a big fan of the car at the moment. And yes, many people are quick to point out that Hamilton does say that mainly every season about Mercedes' testing form, and that it's most likely that they are just sandbagging at the moment because it's let's be honest, it's going to be a tough fight up the top between the megastars of the sport. It's going to be Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull, in my opinion, fighting it for wins still. Who knows which one of those drivers will be up there? It could be Perez walking the season with every single win, or it could be Russell. Who knows? You can't write off other teams as well in the midfield, but Mercedes, going back to them, it's certainly one of the worst sort of testing performances we've seen from the German outfit in their time in Formula One, which is surprising to see, especially since the new regulations, you thought that they would be on top of them, unless they've done what many people were predicting what would happen to Red Bull, and that they've dropped off completely because they're focusing so hard on last year and winning the title, which they won constructors, but not the drivers. So it's going to be an interesting one with Mercedes. And if there is going to be anyone on this entire grid who's going to force a midfield car onto the podium each week, it's going to be Lewis Hamilton. So either way, I think that they're not going to be near the back. They're very unlikely to be near midfield. But if they are, it leaves more room for title fights and for a new constructors champion. Who knows? Maybe we could see Ferrari. Maybe it's their finally their year.
Ryan, here's the weirdest thing about it is, although people have been ruling out Mercedes, saying that they had Not so good of a test in terms of performance. They actually topped the lap count chart. Mercedes competing 384 laps across the days. I believe the next team to that was AlphaTauri with 370. Another team which no one really knows where they are. This is fantastic to see.
Yeah, certainly. It seems fairly clear cut what the top part of the grid's going to look like. I mean, all through most of the tests, everyone was saying, "Oh, it's going to be Ferrari on top," and it looked that way until Red Bull decided to spoil everyone's fun on the Saturday and unleash their new upgrades and pretty much take a second off of what their lap time was on previous days. So that's pretty much underlined, unless Ferrari can find something, or other teams have found something that they're keeping locked away. It definitely looks like it is Red Bull going to be fastest. Ferrari, I mean, it's same way with Mercedes, that they always seem to sandbag. I mean, they have dropped the side pods this year, so there isn't much space to put the sandbags this year. But I do find it interesting how Ferrari are going to be, because I mean, in my head, the way that testing is played out, it's kind of reminding me a bit of 2013, or the 2013 season, where Red Bull had the fastest car and Ferrari was second best, with Mercedes capable of getting race wins here and there and podiums, but not quite having enough for the championship. But again, I'm just saying this based off of testing. You know, the sandbags could come off first race, and they're straight up the front, and everyone's going, "How we fooled you?" Even though everyone already knew. But it's further down that I find it weird, because I generally don't know how it's all going to play out. I mean, the thing that I'm thinking of is which team's going to be last this season, because they've all put in fairly strong performances throughout testing. Alfa Romeo seem fast but unreliable, with Bottas going P6 on a medium tyre, but then a lap later having the gearbox pack up. And I think that's quite interesting, because I think this year's the first season Alfa Romeo are running their own gearbox. McLaren, they looked strong in Barcelona, where it was cool, but then they go to a hot circuit and find that the brakes are overheating. So there's rumours that if they can't get the problem fixed, they may not even finish next race. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting how the midfield and the back end of the race is going to look.
Like you mentioned there, Alfa Romeo, first year they're running their own gearboxes, 2 DNFs, once after the supposed standing start on Friday, I think it was, and then as well on Saturday after Bottas putting that pretty quick run on the medium tyres. Alex, is this a championship that's going to be decided on reliability rather than speed?
At the thick of it, I think not, because throughout the two tests, or if you want to call it the shakedown, and the first test in Bahrain, all of the top three seemed to run with really good reliability. I know Red Bull had that day in Barcelona where they were hounded with gearbox issues. But other than that, those three have run very well. You mentioned Mercedes topping the lap counter. A little bit further down, it could be. Alpine blew up on the last day of the shakedown in Barcelona. You mentioned the Alfa Romeo gearbox, so it could be a little bit further down that reliability hampers some of the teams. But I think at the thick of it, the top three teams, or what you'd expect to be the top three teams, look really, really good reliability-wise.
Harry, I've saved this question for you because I know you'll be able to answer it pretty easily, pretty quickly. Aston Martin, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, a rather quiet test for them. I'm not really sure if that's a good thing, good or bad. Aston Martin clocking in 339 laps, not the lowest, not the highest either. In terms of laps completed, Lance Stroll in the top 10, 173 just by himself. It's strange because Aston Martin, with this new ownership, they've been saying how with the new money they're going to be hopefully up at the top. This year they've turned around. They want a 5-year plan to win. They've got this new factory coming in. Like Sebastian Vettel, they're not going to wait around that long.
Well, testing's been a bit of an unusual one for Aston Martin. I've seen that Vettel has His engine has blown up quite a few times, especially in the shakedown, as well as the testing as well. So it's not a great start to the pre-season for Aston Martin, if I'm honest.
And now the point that everyone listening to this podcast has been waiting for, the time where we butcher predictions for the season and inevitably get them wrong. Alex, who do you think are going to be the top 3 in this year's World Championship?
I think the top 3 is the obvious top 3. I think Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull, not in that order, will be at the top. I think the eventual winners will be Red Bull. They look very quick. Car looks drivable. They look like they have the outright pace. Second, I'm going to go for Mercedes. I think at the start of the season, I think we'll see in Bahrain that the Ferrari is actually quicker, but I think the Mercedes will be able to outdevelop and maybe at the end of the season even challenge Red Bull. So I'm going to go with Mercedes in second, and Ferrari, although it's drivable, although it looks very good, I don't know if they're going to be able to keep up with Red Bull and Mercedes, so I'm going to go Ferrari in third. So Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari, my top 3.
I completely agree with Alex on the 3 teams that will be up there, Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull. I'm going to go for Mercedes as the Constructors' Champions, then Ferrari, then Red Bull. I think that's my 3 in that order. And I think that if I were to hazard a guess at the 2022 Formula One World Champion, I'm going to go for George Russell as the world champion for this year.
Well, given their very strong performances in the Bahrain test, I'm going to go with Haas. No, I kid. I'm going to go for Red Bull after them pulling out all the stops in Saturday's running. I mean, Ferrari, I'm almost carried away with the hype train for Ferrari, but I'm kind of thinking back to how things went back in 2020 when we left testing thinking Ferrari was the team to beat, and then look what happened in 2020 with Ferrari. So yeah, Mercedes, I'm not sure. I think if their porpoising is as bad as it looks, and it continues to be that bad, who knows, they could find themselves being disqualified for the plank being worn down too much. So yeah, it's a hard one, because it seems each team has got their problems. But yeah, I'm gonna say Red Bull, Ferrari, and I'm gonna be a bit different and say if they sort out their brake issue, McLaren.
Well, I'm going to go completely different to all of you because I think Ferrari is going to be winning this year's World Championship with Red Bull second and Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team in third place. I think Carlos Sainz will be the Drivers' World Champion as well. That is the question I'm going to be posing to you guys at home. Who do you think will be the world champions this season? Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Maximum Downforce. Remember, we are on all of your podcast streaming platforms, Spotify, Spreaker, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. That goes for our social media as well, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Hope you have a wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, whenever, wherever you're listening, and goodbye.